Hello children, how are you? I hope you all are studying well. So children, are you ready to go on this journey of English where we are going to talk about different stories, okay? Different lessons which are going to give us some important life lessons, okay? So let's look at these different chapters in English literature, okay? So, do you tell me one thing children, do you have friends? And do you think that your work is more important than friendship? Do you correct your friends when they go wrong? So let's talk about friendship in this chapter called The Meeting. So the prologue says, is it duty which is more important than friendship? People don't always realize that friendship is a great responsibility as well as a duty. So everyone has to make a personal decision about what is more important for them. Friendship is bound to go through many tough paths, sometimes good and at times more than bad. Even then, there is hope for remedy and reconciliation. But a person's duty is not and should not be subjected to such options. So, इसका मतलब ये है कि दोस्ती जो होती है उसको उतना ही हमें इम्पोर्टेंस देना चाहिए जितना हम दूसरे कामों को देते हैं. ओके फ्रेंडशिप में भी उतार चढ़ाव होते हैं. देयर विल बी चैलेंजेस, देयर विल बी टफ टाइम्स. कभी कभी आपके दोस्तों के साथ आपका झगड़ा होगा. यू मे नॉट गेट अलोंग एट टाइम्स, बट एंड ऑफ द डे यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दे आर योर फ्रेंड्स. They are and they will always be your true friends when they stand with you during your tough times and you stand with them during their tough times. So let's see what is there in this chapter. Alright. So do you have the courage to tell your friends that they are wrong? Is it right to turn a blind eye to your friends' mistakes? Share with someone close to you. So children, this is a warm-up exercise for you. Okay. So do you think that अगर आपका दोस्त कोई गलती कर रहा है तो डू यू टेल दैट फ्रेंड दैट यू आर मेकिंग अ मिस्टेक, या जस्ट आप इग्नोर कर देते हो कि छोड़ दो ना, कर लेगा अपने आप, हो जाएगा ठीक? नो, इट इज़ ऑलवेज योर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टू करेक्ट योर फ्रेंड्स इफ दे आर डूइंग मिस्टेक्स. Yeah, they may get hurt because you're correcting them, or they may not realize it, but you have to give it some time and see they will automatically realize the reason why you were telling them to do so. Okay, but in case you have any such experience, do share it with your other friends and your teachers also. Alright, now let's read this wonderful story. The policeman on the beat moved up the avenue impressively. The impressiveness was habitual and not for show, for spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind with a taste of rain in them had well deserted the streets. Trying doors as he went, twirling his club with many intricate and artful movements, turning now and then to cast his watchful eye down the Pacific thoroughfare. The officer, with his stalwart form and slight swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of peace. The vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar of an all-night lunch counter, but the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. So, बच्चों इस story में this just started with a policeman जो एक area में रात को पेट्रोलिंग कर रहा है. सो द वे ही इज़ ही इज़ क्वाइट वॉचिंग आउट द एवेन्यू मतलब जो गलियाँ है क्वाइट इम्प्रेसिवली, एंड इट इज़ नॉट टू डू एनी शो ऑफ. क्योंकि वहाँ पे अगर देखोगे इस एवेन्यू में बारिश हुई है, द रेन्स आर क्वाइट डेजर्टेड एंड ऑल. So although there is some light somewhere at a place जहाँ पे there is food served, it's like a small restaurant, and it runs all night long. बट ये जो एरिया है जहाँ पे ये पुलिसमैन वॉच रख रहा है और पेट्रोलिंग कर रहा है, इट इज़ बेसिकली बिजनेस एरिया जहाँ पे बहुत सी दुकानें या बिजनेसेस शट डाउन हो गए. When about midway of a certain block, the policeman suddenly slowed his walk. In the doorway of a darkened hardware store, a man leaned with an unlighted cigar in his mouth. As the policeman walked up to him, the man spoke up quickly. जब वो चल रहा था, वॉच रख रहा था, तभी उसकी नज़र गई एक पुराने से अंधेरे में जो एक हार्डवेयर स्टोर था वहाँ पे, जहाँ पे एक देयर वाज अ पर्सन स्टैंडिंग और उसके मुंह में एक सिगार थी विच वाज अनलिट. So this policeman goes towards him and he starts asking him questions. So he asked him like who he was and also. It's like, it's all right, officer, he said. I'm just waiting for a friend. It's an appointment made 20 years ago. Sounds a little funny to you, doesn't it? Well, I'll explain you if you'd like to make certain it's all straight. About that long ago, there used to be a restaurant where this store stands. Big Joe Brady's restaurant. Until 5 years ago, said the policeman. It was torn down then. So, जो ये आदमी था, then he starts telling the policeman that you don't have to worry. I'm waiting for a friend out here. जिसको मैंने 20 साल पहले प्रॉमिस की थी कि मैं यहीं पे मिलूँगा. और अभी ये जहाँ पे ये हार्डवेयर स्टोर है, यहाँ पे पहले एक रेस्टोरेंट हुआ करता था. सो द पुलिसमैन अग्रीड दैट येस देयर वाज दिस रेस्टोरेंट कॉल्ड बिग जो ब्रैडीज रेस्टोरेंट विच हैज़ बीन शट डाउन 5 years ago. Okay, the man in the doorway struck a match and lit his cigar. The light showed a pale, square-jawed face with keen eyes and a little white scar near his right eyebrow. His scarf pin was a large diamond, oddly set. 20 years ago tonight, said the man. I dined here at Big Joe Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum, and the finest chap in the world. He and I were raised here in New York, just like two brothers, together. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning, I was to start for the West to make my fortune. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again exactly 20 years from that date and time, no matter what our conditions might be or from what distance we might have to come. We figured that in 20 years, each of us ought to have our destiny worked out and our fortunes made, whatever they were going to be. So he's telling the policeman his story. वो बता रहा है कि मेरा एक दोस्त था जिमी वेल्स करके, जिसके साथ मैंने डिसाइड किया था कि 20 साल के बाद हम लोग इसी जगह पे मिलेंगे. क्योंकि जब 20 साल पहले जब मैं 18 साल का था और जिमी 20 साल का था, मैं अपना फॉर्चून सेट करने के लिए टू मेक माई करियर आई मूव टू द वेस्ट, बट जिमी रिफ्यूज, ही वांटेड टू स्टे इन न्यूयॉर्क. तो तभी हमने ये प्रॉमिस किया था कि कोई बात नहीं, नाउ वील फोकस ऑन मेकिंग आवर फॉर्चून्स, ऑन अर्निंग मनी, एंड देन आफ्टर 20 years we'll come back here to meet. So the policeman says, oh, it sounds pretty interesting, said the policeman. Rather a long time between meets though, it seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friend since you left? Well, yes, for a time we corresponded, said the other. But after a year or two we lost track of each other. You see, the West is a pretty big proposition, and I kept hustling around over it pretty lively. But I know Jimmy will meet me here if he is alive, for he always was the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget I came 1,000 miles to stand in this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old partner turns up. So policeman बोलता है कि 20 years तो it's like quite a long time. Do you think he's going to come? तो ये कहता है कि और उसके बीच में तुम्हारी बातचीत हो रही थी. तो इसने कहा कि yeah, we used to talk for a couple of years, but उसके बाद I got so busy. क्योंकि जहाँ पे ये ही वॉज वर्किंग से द वेस्ट ऑफ न्यू अमेरिका, वहाँ पे इसका लाइफ काफ़ी बिजी हो गया था. एंड देन बट ही स्टिल रिमेंबर दैट दिस प्रॉमिस वॉज मेड, एंड एट द सेम टाइम उसको इतना भी बिलीव है कि उसका जो दोस्त है जिमी जो है, ही इज़ द पर्सन ऑफ वर्ड. वो पक्का आएगा यहाँ पे, एंड आई एम श्योर, क्योंकि मैं इतने 1000 miles यहाँ तक आया हूँ, तो अगर वो जिंदा है तो वो पक्का मुझसे मिलने आएगा यहाँ पे ज़रूर. द वेटिंग मैन pulled out a handsome watch. The lids of it set with small diamonds. 3 minutes to 10, he announced. It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted here at the restaurant door. So उसने फिर अपनी घड़ी निकाली, तो he said it's just 3 minutes more left for 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock was the time when we parted from each other 20 years ago. Did pretty well out in the west, didn't you? Asked the policeman. Because policeman ने क्या किया, notice किया जो घड़ी इसने बाहर निकाली पॉकेट से वो काफ़ी महंगी लग रही थी और उसका जो सेट था, लिड का जो सेट था, साइड्स जो थे वो डायमंड से बने हुए थे. So he asked कि ना शायद तुमने वेस्ट में काफ़ी कमा लिया था. So the policeman asked him and he's like, you bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was kind of plodder. Though a good fellow as he was, I have had to compete with some of the sharpest wits going to get my pile. A man gets in a groove in New York. It takes the West to put a razor edge on him. So he's like, I'm sure कि जिमी ने भी किया ही होगा, वो काफ़ी स्मार्ट सा था, he was a plodder guy and you know he was a good fellow also. तो वेस्ट में कमाने के लिए थोड़ा टाइम लगता है and you know you have to be always on the edge and prove yourself. Okay, that's what he was trying to tell the policeman. Okay, now let's track your performance through this performance tracker. Quickly start answering all the questions that are written in the performance tracker and then let's move ahead. Alright then. Now, the policeman twirled his club and took a step or two. I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around all right. Going to call time on him sharp. I should say not, said the other. I'll give him half an hour at least. If Jimmy is alive on earth, he will be here by that time. So long, officer. Good night, sir, said the policeman, passing on along his beat, trying doors as he went. There was now a fine cold drizzle falling, and the wind had risen from its uncertain puffs into a steady blow. The few foot passengers in that neighborhood hurried dismally and silently along with coat collars turned high and pocketed hands. And in the door of the hardware store, the man who had come 1,000 miles to fill an appointment, uncertain almost to absurdity, with the friend of his youth, smoked his cigar and waited. So, फिर the policeman बोलता है कि अभी मैं निकल रहा हूँ यहाँ से, I'm going back to my duty, and he twirled his club मतलब एक डंडा होता है जो the policeman was patrolling with, and he said like I'm going back to my duty and I hope कि तुम्हारा ये दोस्त आ जाए जिसके लिए तुम इतनी बेताबी से वेट कर रहे हो. Okay, and then of course they bid goodbye to each other and then this person stood there only near the hardware store door. Okay, और तभी वहाँ पे बारिश होने लगी थी एंड ही वॉज लाइक ऑब्जर्विंग द पीपल वॉकिंग ऑन द स्ट्रीट्स की जैसे ही बारिश हल्की हल्की सी बूंदाबांदी शुरू हो गई. ही सॉ दैट द पीपल दे हैव द वंस हु हैव वेयरिंग अ कोट, उन्होंने अपने कॉलर हाई कर दिए है और उसमें चुपके से बारिश से बचा के निकल रहे हैं वहाँ से. एंड ही इज़ जस्ट वेटिंग दैट I hope my friend comes. He did mention it to the policeman कि मैं उसको और आधा घंटा दे दूंगा as a leeway because if he's alive, he will definitely come. About 20 minutes he waited and then a tall man in a long overcoat with collar turned up to his ears hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man. Is that you, Bob? He asked doubtedly. Is that you, Jimmy Wells? Cried the man in the door. Bless my heart, exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both the other's hands with his own. It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here if you were still in existence. Well, 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 20 years is a long time. The old restaurant's gone, Bob. I wish it had lasted, so we could have had another dinner here. How has the West treated you, old man? Bully, it has given me everything I asked for. You've changed lots, Jimmy. I never thought you were so tall by 2 or 3 inches. Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20. So, जैसे ही wait कर रहा था, he had lit his cigar and he was waiting for him to come. About 20 minutes के बाद, a tall person comes near him and, asked him, is that you, Bob? So, फिर बॉब ने उसको इज दैट यू जिमी वेल्स. सो दिस वॉज द टाइम जब वो एक दूसरे से मिले. ओके, एंड देन दे वर लाइक so happy to see each other and of course with the handshakes and all they recognized that yes, it were them only, okay, the people whom they who were like really close bonded friends 20 years ago. तो जब आप अपने पुराने दोस्त को मिलते हो, aren't you happy that you've met your friend after so many days? So that same excitement, that same happiness was there on their face. और फिर वो विश कर रहे थे कि काश यहाँ का जो रेस्टोरेंट है वो बंद नहीं हुआ था, we could have had our dinner here only. Okay, so फिर उसने पूछा कि अरे how are you doing in West? So he's like, I'm doing very well and I knew that you would come if you were still living. Okay, so उसने पूछा उसको कि I never knew that Bob asked Jimmy कि मुझे नहीं पता था कि तुम इतने tall हो. Okay, so he's like, yeah, मैं 20 साल का जब था, उसकी 20 साल की उम्र के बाद I caught up some more height. Doing well in New York, Jimmy? Moderately, I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob. We'll go around to a place I know of and have a good long talk about old times. So, Bob ने पूछा कि are you doing well in New York? So उसने बताया कि yeah, I'm working with the city department and let's go and sit in a place जहाँ पे हम अच्छे से बहुत लंबी लंबी बातें कर सकते हैं. The two men started up the street arm in arm. The man from the west, his egotism enlarged by success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other, submerged in his overcoat, listened with interest. So, जो बॉब था वो अपने जो वेस्ट में जो उसने तरक्की की है उसके बारे में बोलना शुरू कर देता है. एंड देन Jimmy is only listening. At the corner stood a drugstore, brilliant with electric lights. When they came into this glare, each of them turned simultaneously to gaze upon the other's face. तो जैसे वो आगे बढ़ते हैं चलते चलते देखो अभी तक तो अंधेरे में थे, they had not seen each other's face. So as soon as that drugstore came, it was quite lit up. So that's when they actually looked at each other's face clearly. The man from the west stopped suddenly and released his arm. You're not Jimmy Wales, he snapped. 20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug. It sometimes changes a good man into a bad one, said the tall man. You have been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. Chicago thinks you may have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go on to the station, here's a note I was asked to hand you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells. So, जैसे वो उस लाइट में आ जाता है, बॉब सडनली ही लेफ्ट हिज हैंड एंड ही सेड लाइक यू आर नॉट जिमी वेल्स, तुम जिमी वेल्स नहीं हो. तुम्हें क्या लगता है मैं तुम्हें पहचानता नहीं हूँ कि 20 साल हो गए होंगे, बट ऐसे नहीं कि तुम्हारी नाक ही अलग हो गई है. सो नाउ आई नो दैट यू आर नॉट जिमी वेल्स, ओके, आई कैन रिकग्नाइज यू. सो वो कहता है कि फिर वो जो बंदा होता है, वो जो टॉल मैन होता है, वो कहता है इट समटाइम्स चेंजेस अ गुड मैन इनटू अ बैड वन. ओके, तो कहते हैं कि कभी कभी एक अच्छा आदमी भी बुरा हो सकता है. ओके, 20 साल में एक अच्छा आदमी भी बुरा बन सकता है. और अभी मैं तुम्हें अरेस्ट करना आई एम गोइंग टू अरेस्ट यू. ओके, यू हैव बीन अंडर अरेस्ट फॉर 10 मिनट्स, मतलब 10 मिनट हो गए तुम्हें अरेस्ट करके मुझे. ओके, सिल्की बॉब उसका जो नाम होता है, इट इज़ नाउ सिल्की बॉब. Okay, and Chicago thinks that you have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. So अब वो उसको बोला है कि we want to have a chat with you क्योंकि तुमने हमें बहुत भगाया है. Okay, so going quietly, तुम चुपचाप से निकलने वाले थे क्या? So that's sensible. Now before we go on to the station, here's a note that we want to hand you. So वो बता रहा है कि जब पुलिस स्टेशन जाने से पहले कि मैं तुम्हें एक नोट देना चाहता हूँ. ओके, यू मे रीड इट हियर एट द विंडो. इट्स फ्रॉम पेट्रोलमैन वेल्स, मतलब जो आदमी पेट्रोलिंग कर रहा था. ओके, दैट वाज वेल्स. ओके, द मैन फ्रॉम द वेस्ट अनफोल्डेड द लिटिल पीस ऑफ पेपर handed to him. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he had finished. The note was rather short. तो जैसे ही उसने वो नोट खोली, ओके, पहले तो उस मतलब when he looked at that note, वो थोड़ा मतलब he was quite confident when he started. रीडिंग द नोट, बट जैसे जैसे उसने वो नोट पूरी तरह से पढ़ी उसके हाथ शेक होने लगे, ट्रेम्बल होने लगे. ओके, दैट नोट सेड, Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you struck the match to light your cigar, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow, I couldn't do it myself, so I went around and got a plainclothes man to do the job. Jimmy. So, जिमी ने कहा कि उस नोट में लिखा था कि बॉब, मैं उसी जगह पे ठीक जो टाइम हमने डिसाइड किया था तभी मैं पहुंच गया था. ओके, बट जब तुमने सिगार लाइट किया, ओके, दैट लाइट केम ऑन योर फेस, मुझे तुरंत याद आया कि इट इज़ द फेस ऑफ अ पर्सन wanted in Chicago. It's like a criminal's face and I realized it. But being a friend, मैं खुद से नहीं कर पाया, इसलिए मुझे एक प्लेन क्लोथ्स में डिस्गाइज में किसी और को भेजना पड़ा to get you arrested. And that's when he realized that, you know, this person is the policeman. Okay, his friend Jimmy Wells is the policeman. He has caught me. And he was really feeling ashamed for whatever criminal activities he has done over the years of 20. Alright, so बच्चों यही होता है दोस्ती में. Sometimes we are not able to actually confront our friends. और उसके लिए हमें अलग अलग रास्ते देखने पड़ते हैं to tell them that they are wrong. So if you think that your friends are not doing the right thing, you have to correct them. Okay, you may not directly tell them, but you have to find paths indirectly. So in this chapter also, Jimmy Wells did the same thing when he realized that Bob, his dear friend, okay, who had come there only to meet him, was now a criminal. And being a policeman, he had to do his duty also. At the same time, he had to keep his friendship also. So बच्चों, कभी कभी हम सोचते हैं ना कि duty is more important, but sometimes friendship is also important and you have to maintain a balance. Alright, so now quickly reread this chapter and don't forget to do the back exercises.